G'day bike riders, welcome to another video. This week we're looking at 10 of the worst bridges for cyclists and how this form of transport is just ignored in many locations, especially on bridges. I'm the Bike Route Buddy, bringing you reviews and updates about bike infrastructure in Geelong and further afield. Bridges are often pinch points on a bicycle network, as many were built during the time when everything was only built for cars. There is usually large amounts of space allocated to vehicle traffic, but pedestrians and bike riders are marginalised and pushed to unpleasant and often unsafe edges of the bridges. We know that one small gap in a bicycle network can prevent many people from riding. It is no good having world-class bike lanes for 90% of the journey with a death trap for the remaining 10%. Bridges are often this small percentage of the route that prevents people from riding the whole journey. We're going to look at 10 bridges in Geelong that do not cater very well for cyclists at all. Some of these bridges we looked at in our Crossing Melbourne Road video, but we may look at them again from a slightly different perspective. Okay, so let's get started. Number 10. Let's start with the Margaret Street overpass over Melbourne Road and the railway line between Rippleside and North Geelong. This bridge was built in 1971 to allow Victoria Street to be blocked off and for the North Geelong train station platform to be extended. This bridge has no footpaths and bike riders are required to ride on the road. The speed limit is 50, which is pretty fast for these squeeze points. It looks like bike riders are expected to use this bridge, but the only protection from the cars is this yellow warning sign telling drivers there could be bike riders here. On the bridge itself, the barriers are low, and I don't imagine that these would meet current standards. A small nudge from a car could easily send you over the rails and down onto Melbourne Road or the railway line below. This is a route for kids on bikes going to school from the Bayside suburbs to schools west of the railway line, and is also the route to the Geelong Arena, where many junior basketballers congregate each evening. Alright, number 9 is the footbridge or bike bridge over the railway line off Mercer Street. It has a bike route sign to get you across to Geelong West, so bike riders are expected to be riding here. It looks like this was a footbridge from the 1970s and there has just been a bike sign added to it. It has this big bar crossing the entry that is not very visible, especially at night, right at chest level. It could easily end badly for someone coming down off the bridge. Maybe it's a limbo bar, though I expect even the best cyclists might have trouble getting under that. I'm not sure if it is there to slow down cyclists or to keep motorbikes out. If it is the former, it probably needs a redesign or at least some high visibility signs. If it is the latter, motorbikes could easily get around, so the bar really isn't doing its job properly. Moving further up the bridge, the gradient is steep, the corners are tight, and it is quite narrow. You can see the railway line down below and the shape of the bridge. The other side in Geelong West is not much better, with a steep gradient and another limbo bar to take you off at the bottom of the ramp if you happen to come along here in the dark and not see it. Number 8 is the Moorabool Street Bridge over the Barwon River between South Geelong and Belmont. One side has a great protected shared path on it that links the Barwon River trails and also the Southern Bike Link that almost takes you to the city, where it stops just a block short of the main east-west route through the city. The south side takes you down to the river trails, although it has a really tight corner, and as you get further down, there are some sight lines that need improving. Continuing south is a nightmare though. The trail gets really narrow and you are pretty close to 60 km/h traffic before you get dumped out on a big intersection. This section had a fully funded extension all the way up High Street through Belmont, but it never got built. That is a story for another day. Let's jump across to the eastern side of the bridge. Well, the bike lane just ends before the bridge. If you're already on this side of the road, the options are pretty limited. You either cross 4 lanes of 60 km/h traffic to get to the protected lane, or you take your chances on the narrowing vehicle lane across the bridge. Or you try to find your way up through onto the narrow path, where the entrance is usually blocked by cars wanting to turn left out of Barwon Terrace. Another option is to turn down Barwon Terrace and run the gauntlet between the parked cars and the traffic to get onto the river trail, then go under the bridge and back up onto the protected lane. However, that is a 660 metre detour to get across a 20 metre wide road. Studies from around the world have shown that a 30% increase in distance from the shortest route will be enough to prevent people using the alternate route. This option is more than a 2,000% increase. Although this bridge has a great crossing on the western side, connections to the south and the east leave quite a lot to be desired. Coming in at number 7, well, this is not a road bridge but a shared path bridge on the Barwon River Trail. This trail is very popular with runners, walkers, dogs and bike riders and can sometimes be pretty busy. The bridge is very narrow and it's not possible to pass anyone coming towards you, whether on foot, with a pram, or a dog or a bike. It's pretty short and generally people are pretty considerate, but has it outlived its design life? I guess if you're on a mountain bike and you have a few skills, It's possible to ride through the drain, although the splashes from the drain water in the bottom can sometimes be a little stinky at times. Number 6 is the James Harrison Bridge, which is the main bridge linking Geelong to the southern suburbs, Torquay and Ocean Grove down on the coast. It's a pretty busy bridge, but there are some cyclists that use it, as it is by far the fastest way across the river, depending on where you are coming from or going. There is a no access for pedestrians sign at the entrance, but there is nothing to prevent cyclists from using it if they want to. Unfortunately for cyclists, the speed limit is 70, the shoulder is narrow, and is usually filled with debris and rubbish. I wasn't comfortable riding across this bridge to film, so it's just Google Images here. I wouldn't rate this bridge for cyclists, but there is no legal reason why you can't read it. Before we continue on to number 5, don't forget to click the subscribe button at the bottom and give us a like for the video as well. Number 5. This is the John M. McIntyre Bridge that is known locally as the Poo Bridge, as essentially it is a bridge to carry the sewage across the river and has a walkway on top. Sometimes you get a good whiff of the poo at the northern end, which lets you know you're in the right location. It's reasonably narrow by today's standards, and bike riders obviously weren't considered when it was constructed in 1969. It is pretty long at 200 metres. The signs are a pretty good barrier to active transport, as it is a pretty long walk pushing your bike as expected by the sign. For your safety and the safety of others, please dismount and walk your bike. Interesting that this bridge is wider than half the bike lanes around Geelong, but it seems that it is thought that it is too narrow to safely ride along it. Sure, if you come across a walker, it might be a bit narrow and bike riders should stop and let walkers through. Many of the bike lanes around Geelong are narrower than this, so if I'm riding in a bike lane this narrow, I'd love to see a sign for drivers saying, "For your safety and the safety of others, please exit your car and push it." It seems that people are allowed to drive cars close to cyclists, and we just trust that the driver will do the right thing with 2 tonnes. But when it comes to bike riders, we can't trust them and we make them get off and walk. Don't get me wrong here, bike riders should stop and give way to walkers. But surely if we expect people to be able to ride safely in narrow bike lanes right beside cars, they could do so across this bridge. I cross this bridge a lot, and normally there are a few people on it. Maybe a more appropriate sign would be for cyclists to give way to pedestrians. In my observations, most bike riders just stop and hold onto the rail to let walkers past. Most pedestrians are happy to let someone go by on a bike. If they are courteous, offer a smile and a hello. I think this sign is just a butt covering exercise by Barwon Water, as I see very few bike riders dismounting and walking their bikes when the bridge is clear, and I have never heard of an incident on this bridge. Let's digress from the count for a moment, as not all bridges are as challenging for bike riders as what we have seen so far. Here is a great one on Little Mallet Street, where it crosses the railway line on a dedicated bike route. Unfortunately, the bike lane it connects to just ends at Fenwick Street. Number 4 is the Queen's Park Bridge, again over the Barwon River. One day a year, this bridge is open to cyclists, as long as you're on the UCI World Cycling Tour and participating in the Cadell Evans Great Ocean Road Race. For the rest of the year, it's no bikes, and us mortals are confined to the narrow shed path on the side of the bridge. It's a timber surface with a wire to stop you slipping, but I'm always worried about getting a puncture from a rogue bit of wire. The bridge connects up the river trails on either side of the river, but if you are going anywhere else, it can be quite challenging. Coming down the hill from the east, you have to cross over the road to get onto the path on the bridge. If you time it when there's a big stream of cars coming, you might be stuck waiting in the middle of the road. You can go off to the left and under the bridge, but you have to navigate this very narrow gap where the gate blocks off the path, and it is about 200 metres further and has another climb back up to the bridge. If you do cross the road, the path is pretty narrow, and the other nice feature about this is the back of the guardrails. The traffic side gets a nice smooth finish, whereas the walking and riding side has these lovely crisp corners just waiting to catch your leg. Coming in at number 3 is the Melbourne Road Bridge over the railway line in North Geelong. I won't harp on much about this one, as we did a full video about this. All I want to say about this one is that it is on the principal bicycle network and connects 2 major shared paths. There was recently a lot of work done on this bridge, and look what we were left with, a narrow crossing very close to fast moving traffic. I wouldn't come over here with kids or a dog. Check out our video on, is this the biggest missed opportunity for bike infrastructure in history? The link down in the description. Number 2 is the Shannon Avenue Bridge connecting Newtown to Highton over the Barwon River. It also connects the Barwon River Trails, which are highly popular recreation and commuter routes, and cover about 10 kilometres on either side of the river. Again, this bridge has a very narrow path, only on one side of the bridge, and it gets two-way foot traffic and bike traffic squashed into this tiny space. There is a lot of bike and foot traffic, as the next bridge to the west is Queen's Park Bridge, 2.5 kilometres away, and to the east the next one is 2 kilometres, which is the Poo Bridge that we discussed earlier. So to the east it's about 3 kilometres to the next bicycle suitable bridge. The road lanes are really wide, but anyone not in a car is pushed into the margins. There is plenty of space to put in a better protected crossing, like the Moorabool Street crossing on this side, but that would involve taking a small amount of space from the vehicle lanes. Trying to ride on the road is a nightmare, so that's not really an alternative to this path either, as the road is not really wide enough for drivers to push past as they're accelerating out of the roundabout. You have to ride way out in the lane to prevent close passing, and then you get honked at to get out of the way and cop an earful from impatient drivers. You've also got to love the rattle of the concrete panels as you ride and walk across it. Number 1 on our countdown is another bridge over the railway line and Melbourne Road. It is the Church Street Bridge that connects Drumcondra to Geelong West and the popular Packington Street. Walkers and riders are really pushed into the margins on this one. There are 2 traffic lanes each way, and it is 16 metres allocated to cars and trucks. But anyone walking or riding is confined to 1.5 metres and only on one side of the bridge. It is 60 kilometres per hour, so it is not much fun walking or riding on your own, let alone juggling 2 kids, a dog and shopping. Riding on the road is not an option unless you fit into the strong and fearless category of bike rider. I did this once for the video, but I'm back to that narrow path next time I cross here. The ends of the bridge are not much fun. The waiting space is quite tight on the west side, and the east side isn't really pedestrian or bike friendly either. The bridge doesn't really encourage anyone to walk from the Bayside suburbs on the east side to the bustling Packington Street strip on the west side for a coffee, or to pick up a few groceries, or to take the kids to the library or the playground. You'd probably be better off with a massive Ram Ute to make this journey, which you can pick up immediately on the west side of the bridge at the local inner city Ram dealer. There you are, these 10 bridges that really showcase how bike riders are marginalised in and around Geelong. But this is the same in most cities and towns in Australia. These bridges in many cases are enough of a barrier to prevent people from walking and riding for short trips to shops, school, work or social events. Most of the infrastructure we've looked at was built in the late 60s and early 70s. Times have changed since then, but our bridge infrastructure hasn't. I'm sure these aren't the worst bridges in Victoria, Australia or the world, but they are still barriers to active transport. Let us know in the comments of ones in your town that are big barriers for anyone travelling outside a car. Thanks for watching and don't forget to subscribe. I'm the Bike Route Buddy and I'll see you riding on a bridge with satisfactory allocation of space for bike riders.